Service, we have the Buffalo News Viewpoints. At 7 o'clock, we have the National Enquirer. And at 8 o'clock, we have People Magazine. Stay tuned for these readings and more throughout the evening. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jackie, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Sunday, January 4th edition of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Saying Goodbye to a Ballpark, a Place We Can Feel in Our Bones by Eric Brady. We don't have the words in English to express what we'll miss about the old barn in Orchard Park, but the Romans did. Genus loci. It's Latin for the inner spirit of a place. We have many such spaces in our lives. The home where we grew up, the campus where we come of age, the cemetery where our ancestors sleep. A stadium, though, holds a special place among these sacred spaces because it is the locus of experiences so widely shared. Many thousands of us, through generations, have watched pro football history made at Rich Stadium. That was its name when it opened in 1973, the same year that Frank Sinatra first sang "There Used to Be a Ballpark." The lyrics are a lament for lost New York City stadiums, such as Ebbets Field and the Polo Grounds. As it happens, the Buffalo Bills played their first regular season game at the Polo Grounds in 1960, when it was the New York Titans' home field. The Jets, as they were later known, returned the favor as the Bills' first regular season opponent at Rich Stadium in 1973. And on Sunday, the Jets will join the Bills as the last teams to play a regular season game at, take your pick, Rich, Ralph, New Era, Highmark. Rich was new when the song was new, but Sinatra's wistful ballad will soon apply to it. And there used to be a ballpark where the field was warm and green, and the people played their crazy game with a joy I'd never seen. And the air was such a wonder from the hot dogs and the beer. Yes, there used to be a ballpark right here. Tragedy plus time equals comedy, as the saying goes. Well, a ballpark plus time equals character. The Bowl in Orchard Park has plenty of it now, though in 1973 it felt as if it would never come close to the well-worn eccentricities of War Memorial Stadium, the Bills' original home field. The rock pile was urban and old. Rich was suburban and new. Rock pile seats were made of weathered wood. Rich's seats of molded plastic. Robert Redford would later make a great movie at the rock pile, while even today Highmark feels more Hallmark than Hollywood. By now, though, Highmark Stadium is itself a bit of a rock pile. That's what the engineers tell us, anyway. They decreed that we needed a new stadium because the old one is crumbling. And so Highmark will meet the wrecking ball after not much more than 50 years. Never mind that the Colosseum in Rome is still in place after almost 2,000 years. Which brings us back to the Roman concept of genus loci. Think of it as the spirit we feel in our bones when we visit a much-loved location. A shift in the air tells us that the charged atmosphere of a certain place is alive. Sometimes the Roman used a spirit animal to represent this ineffable notion. Think of ours as a charging blue bison or a standing red one. We're going to miss old Highmark when new Highmark opens next summer, no matter how nice the new place is sure to be. Old Highmark satisfied our senses, from the sight of Josh Allen leaping linebackers to the aroma of tailgating, to the roar of the crowd, to the taste of cold beer, to the feel of January snow on our freezing faces. But in time, the new Highmark, too, will offer all of that and something more. There will be a ballpark next door to where there used to be a ballpark. To drink or drink not, the right question in January, by Froma Harup. For anyone aiming to cut back drinking, January's arrival times perfectly. Some may have simply overdone it through the long holiday stretch when alcohol seemed piped into any vaguely celebratory event. Some may worry that they're beginning to forget the last drink they accepted. Recovering alcoholics or others who don't drink at all have it easier in one small way. Their intimates get to know that they do not imbibe, not beer, not wine, not liquor, and so don't push alcohol in their direction. Those who want to drink now and then, in some cases every night, can come up with the rules for 2026. They can establish stronger barriers dividing okay drinking and not okay, always considering body size or other physical traits tied to capacity. That should get easier as the culture shifts. Younger people are drinking less than their elders, and plenty aren't drinking at all. But advertising keeps pressing glasses in people's hands, even if the product has nothing to do with alcohol. Wine, especially champagne, is portrayed as the undisputed symbol of a good time. You see bubbly in ads for casinos, for cruises, for jewelry, for premium hotels, even candlelit spas. I recall a whale-watching trip in Mexico where crew members handed plastic cups of fizzy wine to embarking tourists without asking first, and before noon. Of course, any time a passenger waved it off, they would immediately withdraw the cup. Still, it seemed odd to see alcohol as the default beverage on a nature trip. For several of the above reasons, Dry January was born. This is a month-long pledge to skip alcohol with the option of coming back as a more moderate drinker. Dry January is especially helpful for those feeling socially pressured to drink more than they'd consider ideal. They can tell a host or a barmate, "I'm doing Dry January," and be quickly understood. Let's stay mindful, however, that alcohol does do some societal good. Bars help inject life to downtowns after dark. Lively street scenes often prompt shops to stay open later. Alcohol taxes fund a lot of government, and in many places, a raised glass is part of the local culture. Think of beer in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which markets itself as Brew City, or in Tennessee, a whiskey trail consisting of more than 30 distilleries. Again, the other hand, there are all those health warnings that tie alcohol to various cancers. Some have been challenged. Meanwhile, social isolation may be a major health risk factor comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to a National Institutes of Health study. Bars, along with cafes and bookstores, are third places, not work or home, where individuals can mix with others. Happily, there's been a change in the cocktail culture, leading bars to offer alternatives to booze. Mocktails are non-alcoholic drinks, and often more inventive than mixed cocktails. I recall a good friend and recovering alcoholic who loved bar action. He'd sit at one almost every night and nurse a club soda. Gwen, a Michelin-starred restaurant in Los Angeles, offers a water tasting menu. You can order an East Coast water, such as Saratoga, or go continental with a French Evian. The menu describes a Georgian sparkling water called Borjomi as salty and complex. The restaurant offers recommendations for water pairings with food. Speaking of California, much has been said about a concept called California Sober. That involves not drinking or drinking very little alcohol and turning to legal cannabis for a mood lift. We're still waiting, however, for the resort ad that pictures its elegant guests socializing over a joint. To drink or not to drink? That clearly depends. For the undocumented immigrants, a posada offers safety and comfort, by Anita Chabria. A week or so before Christmas, Sacramento, California police descended on a residential block in a Latino neighborhood in the state's capital city, closing it on either end. Then the party started. Undocumented families filled the street for a posada, a Latin American Christmas tradition akin to a roving block party, with music, food, and an increasingly rare sense of safety. Volunteers handed out toys, a mariachi band played, cops passed out stickers of badges and greeted guests as they rounded the corners, and politicians ate pozole. This brings out the community, brings a little bit of joy into their lives, organizer Ramona Landeros told me. The street is like a safe haven for a lot of our folks. Times have rarely been this tough for immigrants, as we all know. Legal status or not, many of America's transplants are living in fear of President Trump's deportation drive. Across California, where about 40% of the population is Latino and up to 7% is undocumented, that anxiety has been especially sharp and personal. Families here are status blended. Nearly every one of us knows someone here without legal documents. All of us have seen the videos and reports of brown people being detained, citizens or not. That fear is driving undocumented people out of public life. Groceries, retail stores, schools, churches. These have become dangerous places, places where immigration agents could show up at any time, turning an ordinary life into a nightmare. The posada was a celebration not in spite of all of that, but because of it. A moment of hope and happiness amid turmoil. And a reminder that not everyone, not even every law enforcement officer, sees immigration status as a measure of worth. The department is here for them. They don't have to be afraid of the police, Sacramento Police Sergeant Luke Mosley told me, standing near the toy table. We're the good guys, trying to help out everybody as much as we can. Landeros has hosted this event for 11 years, along with a weekly food bank that operates out of her driveway. She was a farm worker until she was 17, an original commuter, as she puts it, traveling with her family in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, and the Golden State as the crops dictated. It was a life that left little time or money for celebrations. During our holidays, working in the fields, there was never a present under the tree, she said. When she was 13, a group of students organized a giveaway, and she received her first gift, a bottle of Avon perfume that smelled like Hawaiian ginger. Now, she pays it forward. This is a time where the kids get to get that gift that maybe their parents can't give them. Maybe can't afford it, she said. I asked the families, what would your children like? And they always say, well, they need a jacket or they need boots. Then we all say, what would they like? Big difference, right? The answer to that question of desire over need was the table full of stuffed animals and footballs, dolls, and trucks. Nearby, a gaggle of bikes awaited new riders. Aritzi, 14, was there with her 5 cousins, all younger. She watches them nearly every day. I'm not using her last name because, well, you get it. She came to this country with her parents when she was 9 and dreams of being a police officer because she wants to help people. But now her parents are talking about going back to Mexico because life here is so uncertain. But at least for today, here on this street, it just feels like a good place to be, she said. That's a small but important comfort in hard days, and maybe the best gift of all. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News. on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Trump's biggest strength was undermined in 2025 by Ronald Brownstein. As usual, when Donald Trump occupies the White House, 2025 condensed a decade's worth of political upheaval into a single year. Identifying the most important of those developments is like picking through the wreckage to find a few family heirlooms after a tornado has torn through the neighborhood. But in the swarm of conflicts, controversies, personal changes, policy reversals, legal battles, feuds, and shifting alliances, several dynamics emerged this year that are most likely to shape the electoral landscape in this year, in 2028, and beyond. Of those key developments, the most significant was the collapse of faith in Trump's ability to manage the economy. In virtually every survey during Trump's first term, more people approved than disapproved of his handling of the economy. Moreover, his approval rating on the economy almost always exceeded his overall job performance rating, which meant that confidence in his economic agenda was a floor bolstering his support no matter which other controversies engulfed him. Now that equation has reversed. Recent surveys routinely show that fewer people approve of Trump's management of the economy than at any point during his first 4 years. Most national surveys last month have shown that 40% or fewer Americans give him positive marks on the economy, and even fewer give him good grades on the cost of living, the problem that tops every survey as America's biggest concern. It's a complete inversion from his first term. The economy is now dragging down overall assessments of his performance. To some extent, Trump is suffering from proximity. President's approval ratings always sag when voters are unhappy with the economy. Like other presidents, he's found that efforts to blame his predecessors for current conditions fall flat after a few months. But Trump's problems extend beyond that. Polls consistently find that most Americans believe he has not focused enough on their cost of living. Even more damaging, more voters say his agenda has hurt than helped their finances, often by a crushing margin of 2 or 3 to 1. Voters particularly dislike his tariffs. The bottom line, Trump's greatest asset during his first term, confidence in his economic mastery, has become his biggest albatross in his second. Unless there's a fix to inflation, I think the economy is going to continue to drag him down, says Democratic pollster Jay Campbell, part of the bipartisan polling team that surveys attitudes about the economy and politics for CNBC. The crumbling of confidence in Trump's economic performance largely explains last year's second key electoral dynamic, the reversal of the president's beachheads among the new voter groups central to his reelection. In 2024, Trump notably improved his previous performance among several big constituencies: Latinos, young men, and non-white voters without a college degree. Republican strategists dreamed of realignment. But Trump's standing with those groups has rapidly deteriorated. Recent surveys that extensively examined attitudes among Latinos and young people, both with much larger samples than typical public polls, found his approval rating with each group has plummeted below 30%. Frustration over the economy explains much, but not all, of that decline. In the Pew Research Center's massive recent Latino survey, for instance, more than 7 in 10 said the administration is doing too much to deport immigrants. Nearly 8 in 10 said his overall agenda was hurting the Latino community. Even a third of his 2024 Latino voters said his policies were harming the community. Former Republican Representative Carlos Curbelo, who represented a heavily Latino South Florida district, told me that Trump had a lot of rope with Latinos, but has squandered that opportunity with his militarized deportation offensive. They have gone way too far, Curbelo added. It's going to be hard for Republicans to recover some of the support. Which brings us to the third important development from 2025. In the normal hydraulic fashion of American politics, Trump's fall allowed Democrats to run well in major elections. But the Democratic Party's overall public image remains weak. That may not matter much this year because midterm elections are predominantly a referendum on the incumbent president's performance. But in 2028, the question of who we nominate matters enormously, said Simon Bazelon, an advisor at Welcome, a new centrist Democratic group. Even if Democrats win a referendum on Trump's unpopularity in 2026, he adds, it would be a mistake to conclude voters are happy with us again, when in fact they may still be angry at us. The heated argument between progressives and centrists over the party's direction will play out this year in Senate primaries in Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, and Texas, among other places. But the real battle will come in the 2028 presidential primary. And that race may turn less on ideology than on disposition. Who Democratic voters believe is the candidate most committed to fight and most likely to beat Trump's so-called Make America Great Again movement. At home and abroad, Trump is governing as if he feels himself completely unbound. But while other GOP officials, with the rarest exceptions, have bowed to his excesses, he's provoked a clear recoil among voters beyond his core coalition. In that way, 2025 reaffirmed the most important political trend over roughly the past 60 years. The rapid erosion of Trump's 2024 breakthroughs underscored that we continue to live through the longest period in American history when neither party has been able to establish a durable advantage over the other. The last 5 times a president has gone into a midterm election with unified control of the federal government, the White House, House, and Senate, voters have revoked it, the longest such streak in American history. Nothing that happened in 2025 suggests Trump can stop that wheel from turning again in 2026. This is from the Bloomberg Opinion. In the Viewpoints, this is everybody's column, Letters from Our Readers. Trump's war against wind is senseless. The Trump administration's second attempt to pull the plug on offshore wind goes beyond arbitrary. Democratic governors fighting Trump's war against wind energy, December 25th. It's vengeful, cruel, and stupid. Trump is punishing not only Democratic leaders, but their constituents, some of them MAGA Republicans as well, taking away jobs and literally leaving homes across New England dark and unheated. What thinking went into canceling offshore wind as America's power needs grow? Hurrah for Governor Hochul for correctly calling out vague national security needs as BS. Dominion Energy has sued over the cancellation of its Virginia wind farm, and Hochul should join with the other affected governors in a lawsuit as well. When Trump last canceled Empire Wind, the governor negotiated. But this administration never keeps its word unless Trump and his friends get a piece of the action. Hochul got a bad deal, and New Yorkers will be stuck with the cost of building that pipeline for years to come. Hochul is right that losing offshore wind will deal a mighty blow to New York's economy and energy reliability. Europe is advancing in using offshore wind, and China is investing in it heavily. The unpredictability of U.S. actions will drive yet more investment from our shores. By Laura Grube in Buffalo. Bill's baptism spot crosses the line. I'm a huge Bills fan who eagerly anticipates and passionately watches all of their games. And with my irreverent sense of humor, I am always open to clever, wacky insights, provided they don't cross an unacceptable line of decency. But there's a certain commercial sponsored by the NFL that has been aired at times during Bills games that I find offensive and even sacrilegious. In the commercial, a baby is being baptized as a new member of Bills Mafia. The commercial uses a formula that mimics the Christian sign of the cross in christening the infant. As it begins, a baby is placed on a cardboard folding table. Then, as the baby is gently lowered through the table, a voice intones, "We gather here today to witness the baptism of the newest member of Bill's Mafia. In the name of McDermott, the Holy Allen, in Marv Levy's name, amen." Some might tell me, "Oh, lighten up. It's all in good fun." I don't think so. I'm very offended by people who, whether intentionally or not, make a mockery of what is held sacred to people of faith. For sure, we in Western New York are passionate about our beloved Bills, with an allegiance akin to religious fervor. But disrespecting sacred words used in Christian prayer and rituals is not appreciated and is totally unacceptable. Michael Scully of Williamsville. New York, not ready for all-electric buildings. Recent letter writers extol the performance of their new heat pumps and now recently converted all-electric homes. I think this is great. Those that want an all-electric house should go ahead. Then they advocate that everybody else should do the same. But this is a pipe dream. It will take decades to generate enough electricity from sources other than coal and gas for widespread electrification, no matter how many pieces of paper Governor Hochul signs. This is an engineering problem, not a political problem. With the shutdown of the coal and natural gas power plants in New York State, the power grid cannot handle its current electric load, and we are forced to import electricity from Canada. None of the promised capacity increases from renewables have materialized or are even on the horizon. And in desperation, the governor is proposing to build nuclear power plants across the state. If everyone switches to electric heat and tries to charge their electric car at the same time, nothing will work. And electric bills will soar as the supply evaporates. Heat pumps only work when the entire building envelope, insulation, windows, roofs, foundation, etc., is designed and built specifically to accommodate them. It's ridiculous to think that all the housing in Buffalo can be retrofitted. Heat pumps won't work here. Natural gas heat will be needed for the foreseeable future. New York State should abandon the All-Electric Buildings Act. By Brian Heine, New York State licensed professional engineer, inactive, of Buffalo. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Progressives naive about immigration. The December 21st editorial spotlight by Bloomberg Opinion excoriates the current administration's actions and rhetoric on immigration. Its ideas on what we should do instead read like a laughable retread of useless gadgets that no one wants, being peddled in middle-of-the-night infomercials that no one watches. The editorial advocates the tired bromides of comprehensive reform and a pathway to legal status as solutions to our current immigration issues. Incredibly, it wants a comprehensive reform that secures the border. Memo to Bloomberg. The border has been secured already. It happened because our astute president disregarded that nonsensical idea and simply enforced the law. They also seem unaware that even a faint hint of a pending pathway to legal status for the undocumented here now incentivizes those in other countries to try to enter illegally. To resurrect both now is puzzling and ridiculous. We should reject the ideas of clueless progressives like Bloomberg editorial writers exhibiting the same naive mindset and advocating the same toxic prescriptions that got us into the current immigration mess. We should instead stick with a president whose actions cleaning up said mess are an unequivocal success. Bloomberg should join us, but they first must take off their rose-colored glasses to see that success clearly. Gary Brignon, Amherst. Shutdown highlighted countries' real problems. Was the shutdown worth it? We'll have to wait and see, but the Democrats holding on for as long as they could before relenting served an important resolve. The daily negative coverage forced a section of the populace who never pay attention to do just that, pay attention. Right-wing media sends the message that all is well. Prices are down, there's no inflation, the job market is booming. Tariffs pay for themselves. Gasoline is under $2, and the economy is the best shape since the invention of sliced bread. However, the real possibility that SNAP would not be forthcoming, skyrocketing food prices, and high costs for health care without subsidies has forced reality on those not paying attention. One of the two parties clearly cared little to nothing for their welfare. Trump went as far as petitioning the Supreme Court to stop the allocation of funds for SNAP. He was willing to starve millions to keep the Democrats from succeeding in getting him and his party to continue health care subsidies for a year. Now you're seeing the reality of that failed Democrat attempt as you open your Obamacare renewals. I guess it's finally sinking into some Trump supporters that he never was willing to return the favor if it affected him personally. There's an old saw about always getting what you pay for. It wasn't like he didn't warn you. Next time you vote, try thinking about how it will affect you and yours personally. I know he did. Stephen Saraceno, Buffalo. Editorial. Justified alarm. Nearby communities are right to raise concerns about Stamp's latest data center proposal. Data centers perfectly call to mind the old mantra, can't live with them, can't live without them. By now, that basic conundrum has become crystal clear. As though millions of people Googled the same question and got the same AI summary in response. The internet does not function without data centers, and most of us use them every single day. Indeed, many reading this are likely holding a vehicle for data retrieval in their hands. Data centers enable your phone or laptop to do what it's doing right now. We need them. We also need to take great care in where they are placed and find ways to mitigate their energy usage. These big concrete boxes filled with computers come with heavy environmental and economic costs. Hyperscale data centers require massive amounts of energy to power their machines and millions of gallons of water to cool their processor chips. As data centers experience explosive growth throughout the world, thanks to the needs of artificial intelligence, more and more electricity is needed, power that residential ratepayers are increasingly subsidizing. Often that power is not enough, and the grid fails, causing life-threatening outages. Often, that power is generated by fossil fuel burning plants, adding to an emission problem that's already making our planet ever less livable. No wonder many people are pushing back hard against data centers being built in their communities. That's what's happening in Genesee County, where, as the news Matt Glynn reported, Stream Data Centers proposes a data center campus at the Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Park that would be 2.2 million square feet spread among 3 two-story buildings. The original plan called for a 900,000 square foot project and would use 250 megawatts of electricity. The revised version would use 500 megawatts, which is enough to power about 300,000 homes, according to some estimates. Remember that Stamp is located adjacent to the homelands of the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, as well as quite near the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge. Remember that this will not be a job engine. After construction is over, there will be about 120 full-time jobs. It's a measly amount for such a huge, energy-devouring footprint. The Tonawanda Senecas have already sued both the Genesee County Economic Development Center and the federal government over stamp-related activities. One suit was related to attempts to build an industrial wastewater pipeline through the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge, but the project was halted after multiple incidents of drilling fluid spillage and road damage along Route 63 in the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge. A third suit initiated last summer with the Sierra Club challenged the data center as first proposed. Now that its size is doubled, it's likely that activism against the project will increase exponentially. Noise and light pollution, in addition to energy use, could increase substantially with a larger facility. The GCEDC's board intends to act as the lead agency for a state environmental quality review of the project. The Tonawanda Senecas object to this, and no wonder. They think New York's Department of Environmental Conservation should provide such oversight rather than a local development agency that has always been in Stamp's corner. We agree. And of course, there are subsidies. The GCEDC had approved $450 million in state and local sales and use tax exemption benefits to Stream in March. But that was for the first version. It's safe to assume that a larger facility will want more. The effect of data centers need not be environmentally catastrophic. A recent study shows that smart sitting, faster grid decarbonization, and operational efficiency can cut these impacts by approximately 73% of carbon dioxide emissions and 86% of water use, compared with worst-case scenarios. But consider a real estate mantra that still holds true. Location, location, location. This is a highly questionable one. The project should not go forward without a full review by the New York DEC. There's a color photo here of a man standing in an area, a grassy area with green trees, and the caption reads, "Roger Hill, chief of the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, is among those who have valid objections to a huge data center being sited in their community." In the My View, when Buffalo almost hosted Ararat. This is by Austin Albanese, who researches the history of America's Jewish communities. On September 15th, 1825, a Buffalo newspaper announced what it called the revival of the Jewish government, the appointment of a judge of Israel, and the foundation of a city of refuge for the Jews. The report appeared in the Buffalo Patriot Extra and documented the public celebration surrounding a proposed Jewish refuge called Ararat, to be established on Grand Island. The plan was associated with Mordecai Manuel Noah of New York, and it was described without irony or embarrassment. According to the newspaper, it was avowedly to offer it as an asylum for his brethren of the Jewish persuasion, who in the other parts of the world are much oppressed. The paper framed this as a civic event, one worthy of formal notice, clergy, and music. The article went further still, expressing satisfaction that the proposal was coupled with a declaration of independence and the revival of the Jewish government under the protection of the United States after the dispersion of that ancient and wealthy people for nearly 2,000 years. Buffalo in 1825 was a growing port village at the edge of the young republic. And yet, here it publicly entertained the idea that the United States could offer protection and refuge to a people described as long oppressed elsewhere. The celebration was meant to take place on Grand Island itself. A flagstaff was erected for the Grand Standard of Israel, and arrangements were made accordingly. But the paper recorded a practical problem. Not enough boats could be procured to convey all those to the island who were desirous of witnessing the ceremony. As a result, the event was relocated to St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Buffalo, where it was described as both interesting and impressive. At dawn, a salute was fired in front of the courthouse and from the terrace facing Lake Erie. By mid-morning, Masonic and military companies assembled, and a formal procession of citizens, clergy, and officials moved through the streets. Inside the church, a march was played from Judas Maccabeus. On the communion table lay a cornerstone inscribed in Hebrew, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." The inscription dated the founding of Ararat to the Hebrew month of Tisri 5585, corresponding with September 1825, and notably in the 50th year of American independence. When Noah rose to speak, the paper reported that he announced the reorganization of the Jewish government, and that a crowded auditory listened with profound attention. At the close of the ceremonies, the procession returned to the lodge, refreshments were taken at the Eagle Tavern, and a final salute of 24 guns was fired. A finer day, the paper concluded, and more general satisfaction has not been known on any similar occasion. Ararat was never built. As the nation approaches the 250th anniversary of the declaration of, this episode invites reflection. In its early years, Buffalo publicly staged the question of a refuge, belonging, and constitutional protection. It did so openly, imperfectly, and with confidence that such questions belonged in civic life. Buffalo did not become Ararat, but in 1825 it hosted the idea of refuge out loud. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Another voice, education. School closures are really about real estate. By Beth Kwiatek. The Buffalo Public School Board states that the decision to close 2 of its schools is fundamentally an educational issue. The closings would assure sustainable and high-quality learning environments while simultaneously avoid a budget deficit. Futures Academy has been listed as an obvious choice for closure because of its poor attendance, high suspension rates, and low academic achievement. The school board's assertion that academic performances drive the closures is false. The real problem? The district has 65 aging structures and a diminishing school population. It's not an educational problem. It's a property problem. The school board should focus on how the closing of any school will impact the neighborhood in which it resides. Futures Academy, located in the Fruit Belt neighborhood, illustrates this point. 25 years ago, the school sat across a blighted and abandoned city-owned block. Dr. Henry Taylor and his UB Center for Urban Studies graduate students worked with the school and many others to reclaim that space. Today, it's a 1-acre luscious green space named Frida's Rebel Garden. Futures Academy and Frida's Rebel Garden are stabilizing forces in the neighborhood. Adults and children participate in the year-long events and programs sponsored by the school and the center. The school and the garden sit less than a mile from the Buffalo-Niagara Medical Campus. The Fruit Belt's proximity to the campus has made it prime for profit making and gentrification. Residents report exorbitant increases in rental apartments without any repairs or improvements made. Homeowners have speculators knocking on their doors willing to pay cash for their houses. Empty school buildings are prized by real estate developers and education entrepreneurs in Buffalo because they're highly adaptable for reuse and cost less than new construction. Since 2002, at least 20 of the BPS buildings sold ended up as apartment buildings or charter schools. Futures Academy is an anchor institution in the neighborhood. It demonstrates what the principal factor for closing any school ought to be: its impact on the stability and development of its neighborhood and the well-being of its residents. Beth Kwiatek is a senior research fellow at the UB Center for Urban Studies. In the Buffalo Next section, Spotlight on the Workforce. The job market in the region is running hot and cold by David Robinson. The Buffalo-Niagara job market is a mixed bag. Some parts of the market are doing quite well, namely the education and healthcare sectors, along with local government. But others are struggling, and those include some of the better paying segments of the job market in fields like manufacturing, information and construction, along with finance and insurance. What it indicates is that hiring across the region is targeted at certain skills, and that it's not a market where a rising tide is spurring growth across the board. Indeed, the job numbers through September, their release was delayed by about 2 months because of the federal government shutdown, show that the region's job market is sputtering, with hiring running at a slower pace than the nation. The local service sector is doing well, adding jobs at 1.3% annual pace over the past year, according to the latest data from the State Labor Department. The local goods-producing sector is not, shedding jobs at a 1.5% rate. Overall, the number of jobs has grown by 1% over the past year, but if you exclude government positions, growth in the private sector has been slower at just 0.6%. Government hiring has been among the most robust portions of the local economy, growing by 2.8% over the past year, with the vast majority of jobs coming from local government. What's growing, what's not? The change in Buffalo-Niagara jobs by sector over the past year. So here are the changes. Education and health services, up 3.6%. Government, up 2.8%. Transportation and warehousing, up 2.2%. All industries combined, only up 1%. The private sector, up 0.6%. Professional and business services, up 0.1%. Financial activities, 0%. Leisure and hospitality, down 0.4%. Manufacturing, down 0.9%. Information, down 1.8%. And construction, down 2.7%. In tourism, Ontario's Big Plans for World-Renowned Attractions by Samantha Christman. The Ontario government is going all in on the Niagara region to make it a world-renowned tourism destination that will support the province's local economy. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says, "The Destination Niagara strategy is Ontario's multi-billion-dollar plan to build new, world-class attractions, boost local arts and culture, and improve transportation in the region. It aims to bring in 25 million visitors annually and double the impact tourism has on Ontario." Niagara is home to the world-famous Niagara Falls, one of the most iconic tourism destinations on Earth, along with a host of world-class restaurants, wineries, hotels, cultural events, and so much more, Ford said in a statement. "Our Destination Niagara strategy will unlock the region's full potential, supporting workers and creating new opportunities for tourists and families from Ontario and around the world to come and experience the best that the region has to offer." The strategy targets investment and development in 5 key areas: tourism attraction, gaming, wine and culinary tourism, arts and culture, and transportation and development. The plan calls for new attractions and experiences that will encourage visitors to stay longer, including ideas such as a new theme park or observation wheel or fixing up Niagara Park's marina. Multiple world-class casinos are on the drawing board, with the hopes of attracting new hotels, restaurants, and entertainment. It would also promote agritourism, local arts and theater, and improve transportation options. As part of the transportation makeover, the QEW would be expanded in Niagara, as would GO service, in an attempt to cut down on commuting times. "We're protecting Niagara's globally recognized tourism sector and unlocking the region's enormous potential as an economic engine of the province," said Stan Cho, Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming. Through this strategy, our government is investing in Niagara's broader prosperity, which will strengthen the communities, workers, and industries that keep our province moving. Niagara Parks has found success with Niagara Takes Flight, a new immersive flight experience in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Now the government and the parks are working together to find partners in the private sector that would help it add more tourism offerings in the region. So far, Niagara Parks is looking for companies to develop an observation wheel like ones found in London and Las Vegas, redevelop the Ontario Power Generating Station, and revitalize the Niagara Parks Marina at Miller's Creek into a new option for recreation. This transformative investment in Niagara as a world-class four-season tourism destination is another example of how our government is protecting Ontario, said Sam Osterhoff, a member of Provincial Parliament of Ontario for Niagara West. This critical support for our regional tourism strategy will not only attract more visitors from coast to coast across North America, but from around the globe, he said. Ontario is also considering a new Niagara River Line attraction, a fully accessible four-season electric tram that would run nearly 4 kilometers through Queen Victoria Park. It would have suspended capsules that would give tourists a unique view from above. Our government is delivering on our plan to protect Ontario by building the transportation infrastructure that people and businesses rely on every day, said Prabmeet Sarkaria, Minister of Transportation for Ontario. In the Niagara region, we're expanding GO service, twinning the Garden City Skyway and exploring better air access so it's easier for visitors to travel and for local businesses to move goods, Sarkaria said. These investments will help boost our tourism, support good-paying jobs, and keep Niagara a key driver of Ontario's economy. The Niagara region in Ontario has already seen a $35 million investment in the Shaw Festival's rebuild of the historic George Theatre, $250,000 in Shaw Festival funding for 2025, and more than $1 million for other festivals and events in the Niagara region. Niagara Takes Flight, which explores Niagara's history going back 13,000 years, has brought in more than 120,000 visitors, generating nearly $3.5 million in gross revenues. The Toronto Power Generating Station project, funded by more than $300 million in private investment, is overhauling the site into a visitor attraction overlooking Niagara Falls from the banks of the Niagara River. A nearly $4.5 million renovation of the Niagara Falls train station has completed its first $2.8 million phase. The overall project aims to create a more modern, multimodal transit hub. The province expanded Weekend Go train service on the Lakeshore West Line in November. The Niagara region's $3 billion tourism industry brings in more than 13 million visitors every year, supporting more than 40,000 jobs and making up 6% of the region's gross domestic product. Niagara Falls is ready with open arms to welcome even more of the world to experience the wonder of our city, said Jim Diodati, Mayor of Niagara Falls, Ontario. The plan will help level up our tourism economy and drive major new private sector investment, generating great job opportunities for residents and helping to ensure Niagara remains on the bucket list of visitors from around the world. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, January 4th issue of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News. We read from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News every Sunday at 6 p.m. Your reader has been Jackie. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the National Enquirer. At 8 p.m., we have People Magazine. And at 9 o'clock, we have the New York Times Book Review. Stay tuned for these readings and more. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please stay with us. If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Zero, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,